feeling physically getting back out on the field here?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm feeling I'm feeling healthy, and I think it's always one of those things you don't know how you're going to feel in a month. But as of right now, I feel really good. I feel better than what I was expecting, frankly. But really encouraged with how my knee has handled the load this week.
What would you need to be able to do to know that you're ready to get into the game?
Look, I trust my knee. Like, my knee feels super stable. I think it comes down to you just you got to rip the Band-Aid off, so you're not going to know how it's going to respond to contact until you start to see contact, and that's a hard thing to imitate until you get out and do it. So I don't know that I need to see or feel anything else on my knee before I get to a game.
Jason, this probably is a dumb question, but 35 years old, major knee injury, long rehab process. Like, what keeps you going? What keeps you, wanting to do this every week and go through that all over again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded question, and it's a hard one to appropriately answer, in a quick second like this. But I love playing football. Football has given me and my family some incredible experiences and given us incredible opportunities. And you realize that football there's a shelf life to doing this, and had a lot of conversations with the organization this offseason and with Kellen and Mickey, and I wasn't ready to walk away, and they still had a vision for me here, and so I told them I was going to do everything I could to make sure I could help the team win.
Did you take some time to think about that, or you kind of knew pretty early in the offseason that you wanted to keep going?
I would say Mickey and Kellen both handled the situation very well, because it was one of those things where we had time. There was no decision that was forced upon me. I would say from the early stages of my rehab all the way back until after the injury, my mindset was I was going to rehab this as if I was going to play. So at the end of the day, I got two little guys, and we want to add to the family, and so I'm going to make sure that I'm healthy to be a dad to those little guys. So I was always motivated to get back to full health, whether I was playing football or not. And then I think mentally, as you get closer, then you start to have, more in-depth conversations.
Given the seriousness of the injury, what did they tell you about the outlook? Was there a doubt, like, how right up that you could get back to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's not one injury that's the same, right? But after the surgery and having conversations with the surgeon and the therapists and everything else, there was question marks around 2025 for sure, and the timeline was not super encouraging, frankly, for me. But again, it was one of those things that we didn't have to make any decisions, early this off season. So it's just one of those things where you just put your head down, you go to work, and see what happens.
Was there ever a timeline that included trying to return during training camp, so you wouldn't have to miss the first 4 weeks, or was that pretty early on? Like, hey, let's aim for October.
Yeah, I think we had some conversations like that, and we had to evaluate, kind of a weekly type of thing. And then I think as you start to put together a roster, right, there's a lot of question marks as far as, what's this makeup going to be of a 53-man, and what's my availability look like. And so there was so many factors that went into that decision. We had all the conversations.
How about role? I know you were having conversations with Clint and took on a big role really early, but this is so opposite because it has to be. I mean, are you guys going to make that up as you go along, or do you think they have a pretty good idea of how you'll fit in?
I mean, there's so many variables given where we're at right now. So I think it's one of those. Let's take it a day at a time. Let's take it a week at a time, and see where this thing evolves. Obviously, I've had a number of conversations with Kellen, dating all the way back to February, March when he first got the job, and when he was going through this interview process. But it's a hard thing to define, and the reality is, I've had 3 days of practice with his coaching staff, and they've had 3 days of practice with me. So I think everyone's still learning through this process, and I think it'll be one of those things that just evolves through time.
Has there been a benefit of being primarily in the quarterback room for meetings, learning the offense that way, and you guys at the quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's been really helpful. Obviously this is no brainer, I guess, answer. But when you're in the quarterback room, you learn the entirety of the offense, and that's been really helpful for me. And then I think you fine tune what you're going to be asked to do as far as techniques and various things like that with different position groups. And Kellen and Scott Linehan and Nuss and those guys have been really great about coaching the details of the little things that I'd be asked to do.
That 2025 was an uncertainty at one point. You're proud that you're standing here today.
Yeah. I mean, look, I felt all the emotions over the last 9-10 months. So to be standing here right now and being able to be out of practice with my teammates and stuff is, it's an emotional thing. It's one that you're filled with gratitude, and been a lot of people that have been really involved with this process, and so as you take a step back and you think about all those people and the experiences that you had along the way, it's one that fills me with gratitude.
Having just kind of been through lengthy rehabs before, does that experience help when you're going through something like this, or some of those were a long time ago, so I don't know if that.
Yeah. Look, I think as I look back at my rehab, I would say you kind of learn different lessons, and you learn different things about yourself in each one, and you're at different phases of life. And being 35 and having played here for a while, and being at the tail end of my career, it's a different perspective than one that I've had before. But I think it has certainly helped me, having gone through this in the past. But this one was unique. I've never experienced dealing with something from one season that is, carried into the next the way that this one did.
And was it when the injury happened? I don't think we talked to you since. Was it you immediately knew?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't know the severity of it, but I knew it wasn't good. Yeah.
Taysom, I think you're officially listed on the roster as a quarterback. Again, does that matter to you? Have you ever cared what position it says next to your name?
No, certainly not anymore. No, I'm grateful to be here. Man, like I said, I've felt a lot of emotions through this week of practice, and felt a lot of love from my teammates, and it's been a great experience for me. And at the end of the day, I want to come in and help us in any way that I can, and whether I'm designated as a QB or tight end or whatever doesn't make any difference.
The tush push, the play you were born to play.
I don't know. That's a fair question. The answer is probably yes, but I don't know. I think probably.
Really, in either role, you could be the pusher or the pushee, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had a ton of exposure. To that one, but yeah, it's probably something that I was suited for.
With the game coming up, at what point does your role need to be defined? Or do they come to you and say, hey, this is what we have in mind for you this weekend? Are you comfortable doing that? What's the conversation like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a learning experience. I think Wednesday was the first time that I was out with everybody. So I think it's what is what is it going to look like for him? Is he going to be in a situation to play, and and then what does that look like in terms of his role and everything else? So, certainly by now we have a better idea of how I'm moving, and how did my knee handle the last 3 days, and it's become really defined at this point.
Along those lines, like what kind of checkpoints you look for physically to make sure you're comfortable like over the next, if you are called on for Sunday's game, like, do you feel comfortable for that?
Yeah, I think as you go through the rehab process, there's a big checklist, system, and we've been checking those off the list, and so they wouldn't have allowed me to go to practice if I hadn't hit those boxes, So really, at this point, the only thing that we haven't been able to simulate is contact, And so Wednesday practice was a good experience for me, just to be back in pads for the first time, and try to be around, people in a confined space, and what is that going to feel like? And it doesn't matter how much you rehab; it's a different experience when you're around a bunch of players and you're having to make different cuts and plants, and so. The last box that really needed to be checked is the contact piece.
Did it help having Foster there? You mentioned kind of how nice it was to,
Was it annoying?
No, look, I would never wish this on anyone or Foster, but it's a really unique experience to go through an injury like this, and few people can relate to it. And so when you have a teammate and a buddy that you get to talk to and rehab together and say, how's your knee feeling? How did your knee handle that? Like, oh my gosh, my knee's, that was a big deal for me. Never wished that on him, but I definitely became, the benefactor of being able to go through that with him.